EZOVERDOSE here, and welcome to my third Embersilk farming guide. That's right, number 3, because the assholes at Blizzard keep nerfing every spot. They nerfed Deep Home, they nerfed Twilight Highlands. They're gonna nerf one of the spots in this video for sure. So apparently, farming cloth, you might as well be Al-Qaeda in WoW. Farming cloth is just destroying the community, it's just destroying the game, and they can't have that. So, with that said, let's talk about the first spot. Tol Barad, the Restless Front. Arguably the best spot, and the most likely and soonest to be nerfed spot. So this spot, you are killing quest-related mobs that have a relatively fast respawn time, probably about as fast as the Deep Home spot and the Twilight Highlands spot used to be, but there are less mobs. So right off the bat, these 3 spots are not going to yield you as much cloth as you've been used to from Deep Home and from Twilight Highlands. Those days of getting 2,000 cloth an hour are gone. So just get over that. So this spot, you're going to go back and forth and just kill as many mobs as you can. Yeah, this is obviously going to be much better for a ranged class to do. And the trick to maximizing the cloth output from this spot is not looting too much. In the video, I loot every 3 to 5 minutes. And then I loot if I am just on top of loot and it's right in front of me. But if you go out of your way to loot every time you kill something, you're not going to get as much loot per hour. And you're just going to make a path back and forth, killing stuff at max range, and that's it. Pretty simple. I'll give a breakdown at the end of the video on how much cloth I got from this spot and all the other spots as well, and compare them. Okay, the next spot is Batol on normal, not heroic. And I consider this the best spot, even if it does not yield the absolute most cloth per hour. I still consider it the best spot. And I'll talk about that at the end as well. So, tips for running through this is obviously do as much DPS as possible and just pull everything. Also avoid the bosses. You do not have to kill any boss in here. You can walk around them, which is what you want to do. And then when you get to the end, you are going to just jump off the side and kill yourself. And then as you're running back into the instance, reset the instance while you're still dead, and then zone back in a fresh instance, and repeat. The last spot is the Twilight Gate in Twilight Highlands. Now this spot kind of goes hand in hand with Batol. I recommend using this spot after you get instance locked from Batol. And if you don't know what that is, I'm going to cover that in the pros and cons whenever I talk about the loot that I got from each of these 3 spots here in a second. So for this spot, there are 2 areas that are like floodgate areas where there is a crap load of mobs fighting NPCs. So this is like the honeypot for this little area. And then after you kill these, like, you want to make sure you kill these kind of as priority. And then after you kill those, you're just going to kind of tag what you can and like round it up. So if you're on a really high DPS character, it's actually going to be harder than if you were on a lower DPS character in this area. Okay, so down to numbers. how much cloth can you expect to see from each one of these spots. Now what I've done is I tested each one of these spots for 16 minutes. I was aiming for 15. I rolled over to 16 on most of them. So I'm going to round down my results because of that, just to be fair. So for Tolbarad, I came out with 317 cloth, 15 chests, 9 greens in 16 minutes. Those 15 chests gave me another 69 cloth for a total of 386 cloth in 16 minutes. So we multiply that by 4 and we are at 1 hour and 4 minutes. That comes to 1,544 cloth. So to be fair, we're going to call Tolbarad 1,500 per hour. Grim Batol came out with 262 cloth, 10 chests, and 16 greens. The 10 chest gave me 37 more cloth for a total of 299, which comes to 1196 over an hour. So we're going to round that one down to 1150. Now Twilight Highlands at the Twilight Gate, I came out with 296 cloth. I was kind of surprised with that actually. 8 chests and only 2 greens. The 8 chest actually gave me 53 cloth. So it's just kind of RNG how much cloth you're going to get out of these chests. So for a total of 349 cloth in that spot. So that over an hour comes to 1396. So I'm going to round that one down to 1350. So some pros and cons of each one of these spots. Let's talk about Tolbarad first. The pros, it's arguably the most cloth per hour. You don't need a lot of DPS. You don't need a lot of gear. You can be a healer or a tank and do it still efficiently because the mobs are half dead whenever you're hitting them. The cons, it is an open zone. You will most likely be seeing other players out there fighting for the spot. And it is just bad for a PvP server. If you're on a PvP server, it's just, you're asking to be ganked out there. Grim Batol. Pros. It's an instance, so you will not see anyone else in there. Every single bit of loot is your loot. And that's another pro. There's more loot in there. It might not be cloth, but it is just more, it's more junk, it's more grays, it's more greens. It turns out to be more gold from that place. So if you're strictly after just cloth because you need the level tailoring or something, you can try your luck with Tolbarad because that's going to give you potentially the most cloth per hour. But Grim Batol, if you want to be sure that you don't have to mess with nobody, you don't have anybody ganking you, there's no one in your spot, there's nobody else out there, you can just go to Grim Batol. You don't have to worry about none of that. It's all going to be yours. So some cons for Grim Batol. Even though I consider Grim Batol the best spot, it does have cons. Being an instance, you can only do it 5 times per hour. There is a instance per hour limit for anything, for raids, for dungeons, anything except the looking for group stuff. That is excluded from this limit. But if you go in and then clear it in about 7-8 minutes like I did and come out and reset it and do that over and over, the 6th time you try to go in there, it will not let you in there, and it's going to say you have entered too many instances too recently. And that is on an hour cooldown, so you would need to wait 20 minutes or so. You know, if it takes you 40 minutes to get to that point, you're going to have to wait another 20 minutes for that first time you went in to overlap that 1 hour mark. Another con is the DPS factor. The more DPS you do, since these mobs actually have, more than 19,000 health compared to Tolbarad, the more DPS you do, the more cloth you're going to get per hour. So this rolls over to the Twilight Highlands spot, because the Grim Batol spot and the Twilight Highlands spot are going to go hand in hand, because when you get locked out of Grim Batol, you can just head right over to the Twilight Highlands spot at the Twilight Gate and just finish your farm there. And if you got a stopwatch going, or you're keeping track of time, you could potentially run back in Grim Batol 1 or 2 more times while your potion of treasure finding is still up. And another pro for the Twilight Highlands spot is it's close to a mailbox, so you can actually dump your stuff. If you're not an engineer and you don't have a mount that has a repair on it, you're pretty close to a mailbox and a repair guy to do that. And then the cons for the Twilight Gate spot are basically the same cons as Tol Barad. It's an open zone, other people can be there, and it's bad for a PvP server. It's less bad than the Tol Barad spot, since the Tol Barad is actually a PvP zone. You're most likely to encounter PvPers there, especially on a PvP server. But you can still get ganked in Twilight Highlands on a PvP server. So those are my findings, and you can pick whichever spot you like best and go to town. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.